Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Gary Null. Our program is about health and nutrition, ways that we can improve the quality of our lives. And once again, due to the popularity of the series, we've taken our cameras on location. Today we are at a beautiful lake, one of the most beautiful lakes in the United States, talking with one of the most beautiful human beings that you're going to have the pleasure of meeting. Her name is Heather Muir, and she is responsible for educating us about the importance of sprouts. Heather Muir has, for the past 30 years, been involved in what's called natural culture, natural hygiene. In other words, cleansing the body, purifying it, detoxifying it, using nature's own medicine cabinet. Well, we're out here. By the way, you may hear a bit of background noise from the speedboats going by, so please be patient with us on that. We couldn't tell them not to come by as we're doing the interview. But get out a pencil and paper because you're going to learn an awful lot during our program today. Welcome to our program, Heather.
Thanks, Gary.
Nice to see you.
I'm kind of really in my favorite place, you know, because whenever I'm around sprouts, I feel like there's nothing I hardly need to say because they're all saying it for me.
Let's look at some of these different sprouts.
Okay.
First off, a lot of people might have heard of alfalfa sprouts because it's popular, but they don't know about these sprouts. They don't know how to eat these. They don't know about edible flowers. I'd like for you to give us an overview on what are sprouts, why are they important in our diet, what are the different versatile ways we can work with them and eat them, and how can we make them? Can the average person do what you just did and make something like a clover sprout that this is? Isn't that beautiful?
That's a buckwheat.
It's a buckwheat? That's
yeah.
close.
It's really, well, I tell you, anybody can do this, and as a matter of fact, you know, in the winter, we're coming up to the winter in a little while, and we'll want a lot more greenery around our houses. And one of the things we need more is oxygen in our houses because our exchange of oxygen is very low in the winter. So if you grow greenery, especially wheatgrass gives off negative ions. If you just grew a tray of wheatgrass, and I'll tell you, if you just hold your hand over it, you can just feel the energy. Just put your hand over it, Gary. Isn't that magnificent?
Feels nice.
I just hand this around to my students and let them just sort of really absorb the energy from it. Whenever I'm preparing something for you, I usually take about 7 to 10 days to prepare everything. And of course, all the seeds have to be organic, and I look around and get the best seeds that I can. And I soak them for about 24 hours, the hard ones. Now, this is buckwheat. These are sunflower seeds, and this is wheat berries. And you get them and you soak them for 24 hours. And then you have regular sterilized soil. In the beginning, you can get the sterilized soil because later on you can make your own compost, and I'll tell you how to do that. It's wonderful. But you get the regular sterilized soil, and when they're all soaking wet after 24 hours, you take and pour the water off, and then you pack them very tightly down in the soil. And I put 6 or 8 layers of white paper towels over the top, soaking wet. That is the top layer of soil. And then after that, I put them in a plastic bag and I tie them very tight, and they're airtight, so they're in a little kind of a greenhouse, usually an opaque plastic bag, because we want them in the dark to go to sleep for a little while. And we put them to bed for 3 days. And don't forget where you put them. But we put them somewhere. It doesn't really matter whether they're in the dark or in the sort of a shady place. The third day is very exciting because when you come and look at these things, you see everything is moving. You almost feel like it's moving up, and you see all the papers pushed up. And when you lift the paper off, especially with the wheatgrass is incredible. You see these little yellow sprouts coming up, and you put it in the light, and so help me, within half an hour, it's as though a paintbrush was put over it with green paint. You see the green happening immediately. The photosynthesis is happening before your eyes. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I always get very emotional about it. So then you watch this thing go green. They grow for 7 days, and then you can cut them off and you can juice them. And when you juice them, you can drink an ounce every day. It's fresh wheatgrass is fantastic. And remember, it loses its enzymes in 1 hour after you drink it. If you leave it lying around, it's no good. Our juices are very fragile. Their enzymes last a very short period of time, and they're very nutritious. With buckwheat, we call this buckwheat lettuce. This is the highest in lecithin. Very, very high in lecithin. So your natural lecithin is coming up for you there. When you taste this, we also cut these down and put them in our salads, and they not only look beautiful, but they taste absolutely delicious. There's a sort of a bland, wonderful, you're tasting them right now, they're really lovely. They
Very
really
sweet.
taste good. Oh, they are, they're absolutely lovely. I love them. Sunflowers are very interesting to grow because you get your regular sunflower seeds. It depends what I get. Sometimes I get the black ones.
Look how
sometimes I
long
get
these
the-
are.
Yeah, aren't they tall? See there? Now these are 7 days old. Actually, they're almost 8 days old now. And you see there's your dicotyledon, and your second little leaves are already forming. But this is absolutely perfect. So when you eat them down to here, if you chew these, Gary, you can actually taste the sunflower taste. They really have a sunflower taste.
They do. Nutty flavor.
Nutty, and if you put these in with your salads, I tell you, there's a different flavor to the whole salad. So there's buckwheat, there's sunflower, there's green wheatgrass. Now the wheatgrass, you juice really for medicinal purposes. That's a real tonic for you.
That's a blood purifier.
And it's, you know that it's very high in abscisic acid, Gary.
Which
It's
is
the
an
highest
anti-cancer agent.
anti-cancer agent, absolutely.
Oh, see, now they're the sunflower seeds.
That's the little tiny hull. It's just.
Isn't it amazing if you look at it? From that little seed, look how much of a sprout grew.
Incredible.
There's the tiny little black seed, the shell, and all that grew out of it.
Do you know that the energy in a sprout is absolutely incredible? The B complex goes up 1,200%, and the vitamin C is 600%. This was done by Victor Kalvinskis, the research into the value and energy of sprouts. Now, one of my favorite sprouts, of course, is the wheatberry. In fact, one of these days, Gary, my little book called The Wonderful Wheatberry is going to be published somehow. Here are my wonderful wheatberry sprouts. Now, I use sprouts in almost everything with wheatberry sprouts, and this is perfect food. Dr. Francis Pottinger, at the turn of the century, said that wheatberry sprouts are perfect food. They have every nutrient known to man, including your B12, that all your people will say, how do you get your B12 if you're a vegetarian? You get it from wheat sprouts. And I put these in all kinds of things. They're just delicious. And you know, children have a habit of being given gum. You give them a handful of wheatberry sprouts to chew. They're absolutely delicious.
Very, very chewy, and as you chew the wheat sprouts,
They get
it's
sweeter.
very
and sweeter.
sweet until it's as sweet as sugar.
Yes, and it's absolutely magnificent. I mean, the
Now,
nutrition.
Heather,
in this is-
explain the difference between a wheat sprout and wheat grass.
Okay. Well, the wheatberry sprout, these are 5-day sprouts. And as you can see, if you can just notice the little teeny weeny green thing is beginning to start. And we do these in a jar. I sprout these in the jar. Instead of just packing them in the soil, what I do is I leave them in the jar and I rinse them. You've got to rinse these a lot, several days, for several hours a day. You keep on rinsing them. And these are 5-day sprouts, and you can use these as is in your salad. You can put them in all kinds of things. In fact, when I make a rice dish, would you mind please going away, Dee? When you sprout a wheatberry sprout, actually gosh, I almost forgot what I was going to say, but anyway, that bee really put me off. When I actually do many things with this wheatberry sprouts. I put these in bread. When I make a rice dish, I stir these in at the last minute, and they are absolutely delicious. And I put these in with buckwheat. If I'm making, the buckwheat that we were eating as a cereal, you can stir it into that. If you've got a beautiful vegetarian soup, the last thing you can have a tray of these, a bowl of these right on the table, and you can put them right into the soup, stir them in, and they still haven't lost their enzymes. They're all nutritious. They haven't lost their enzymes because they've just been thrown in at the last minute. So you are having the most fantastic nutrition. I mean, you couldn't beat this for nutrition. The other sprouts that I grow are lentils. I'm always sad when I see lentil soup because I always think it's abused. Lentils are the best sprouted. And again, when I use these lentils, I throw them in with rice. I will also put my hajiki in with the rice and then stir in the last minute, stir in the lentil sprouts. And they
Hajiki is a seaweed.
It's a seaweed which will, bring up the value of everything. So with a bowl of rice and these lentils and a little bit of the hajiki, you've got, again, a perfect food. So I guess I've just got a love affair with sprouts. So this is the buckwheat. That's the sunflower seed. That's a big tray of really beautiful buckwheat and your green wheatgrass. Now the wheatgrass, as I say, you use as a medicine. This is really medicinal. If you want to keep yourself totally clear, your skin clear. You know, when I was up with Ann Wigmore, you know what we used to do in the morning? We used to juice the wheatgrass and we used to put it in an eyeball bath and wash our eyes out with it. It was a little stingy, but it was really
Heather, let's recapitulate for the benefit of people watching right now.
all right.
First off, concerning sprouts. Sprouts are one of nature's most perfect foods in that as far as life energy, they're the highest single food in the world. There's no processing. There's no pesticides, there's no preservative, there's no saturated fats, there's no cholesterol, there's no allergens. It's high-level nutrition. The difference between the vitamin C in a seed and the vitamin C in a sprout is 500 times more vitamin C. You have the chlorophyll, which is a blood purifier. The chlorophyll helps the body produce more of the necessary energy that it requires for good health. It's an intestinal cleanser. The sprouts have good quality fiber. You get the B vitamins in sprouts. Now to sprout, it's relatively easy. You start off, and we'll do it stage by stage. You start off with seed. You get a seed in a health food store that's a sprouting seed.
Yes.
From the sprouting seed, then you soak it overnight in water. In the morning, you drain off your water. You can use a regular bowl. Then you put a cheesecloth over top of it and just put it someplace. You can put it in a dark place. Now twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, take that bowl of sprouts and rinse it. This way, by rinsing it, it's cleansed. And you put the cheesecloth back over, and you'll have to forgive the noise in the background. We're on location, so we're going to have at times airplanes and boats and trains and little tiny pygmies running over the sprouts. So what you do then is you let the sprouts come up, and every day you see these sprouts rising and rising and rising, and anywhere from 3 days to 5 days they're ready to eat. Now you can use them in salads, you can throw them in at the end of soups, you can make a dip, you can make tofu, put tofu in a blender with, if you put, tofu in a blender with sunflower sprouts, some cayenne pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and sesame seeds, you have a delicious dip. I like to take wheat sprouts, these are the wheat berries, put these in with some carrot juice and tofu and a banana and blend that in a blender. It makes it outrageously delicious, healthy way to start your day. It's like a liquid porridge. And what's nice is that there are almost 50 different seeds that you can sprout. 50. So you can make a whole meal. Now then, since you can do these for pennies, one tray, I figured this out. I went down to health food stores. Sunflower seed sprouts are selling for $2.89 for a little tiny bag that's less than a half ounce.
That's right.
Now this tray, which weighs about 3 pounds, cost Heather less than what, about a quarter?
I would say about maybe 50 cents.
50 cents? Mm-hmm. So 50 cents, where retail, that's about $35 to $45. So for sprouting things yourself, the difference is spending 50 cents and saving $40. What a ratio. 80 times savings. And yet there's nothing that you could eat that will do more for your overall well-being and good health than sprouts. Now Heather, there's something about what was called Rejuvilac, which was important.
Well, when you first soak the wheat berries, of course, you put in a quart of water, distilled water. I always use distilled water because remember that rainwater is distilled water in its pure form. So you soak the wheat berries in distilled water, and then you pour off the water in 24 hours. And you drink that. That's called Rejuvilac, and that has every known nutrient in it, an enzyme and all kinds of different nutrients in it. It's absolutely the most incredible drink that you can drink. It sort of tastes a little bit like slightly fermented. It's almost like a beer in a sense when you taste it. And you can make it as strong as you want or as weak as you want. You know, some people may not be used to the taste, but eventually you really get used to the taste, and it's really refreshing. And an 8-ounce glass of that every now and then. We used to go up to Ann Wigmore's, and we used to have this huge whole set of juices and everything, and the Rejuvelac was kept at about 70 degrees at all times, and we were always drinking it. Everybody, when they went by, you know, would drink the Rejuvelac. It was really delicious.
Heather, the Essenes, which were one of the ancient tribes of Judea, the Essenes, in fact Christ was an Essene, made a bread, and it was called Essene bread, E-S-S-E-N-E. And they made this bread not by cooking it, but by allowing it to bake in the natural desert sun.
That's right.
On the stone.
On a hot rock.
Now, this bread just became popular in the United States in the last few years. Now, what makes it popular is, first, it can last up to 3 weeks to a month in your refrigerator. It has a very nice crust on the outside, but moist and chewy inside. You can make your own Essene bread for just pennies a day, and there are all types you can make. Now, would you like to tell people how to do it?
Yes, I'd also like to tell you about, for those who are thinking, oh, I'm allergic to wheat, the pH changes absolutely radically when you sprout. So you don't have to worry about being allergic to wheat. Yes, well, what you do with the Essene, we grind it in a meat grinder, regular grinder, and you can put anything in it. You can we put some Rejuvelac in it, and there are different recipes. Some you can make with raisins and fruits, which are simply absolutely outrageous.
Cinnamon and allspice.
All kinds of things. Or you can make the ones with a little bit of onion in it, and chives, garlic, all kinds of things, and put other herbs in it. And you can make 2 different kinds of Essene bread, and it's just.
Well, let's start
really
from
delicious.
scratch. Might I suggest that right now, get a pencil and get a paper so you can write down this recipe. And if for any reason you can't, or you're not right now with a pencil and paper, just write Gary Null, that's N-U-L-L. And if you send it in care of your local television station, they'll forward it on to me. And I'll send you a free recipe on how to make Essene bread at home. Any type of Essene bread for pennies a day. It's the best tasting, healthiest bread in the world. But we're going to show you how to make it.
Well, as I say, you've got to get an old-fashioned grinder. I like the old-fashioned grinders. Of course, you can use other ones too, but the very ones that go very fast are going to, the centrifugal force is going to sort of spoil the nutrients. So I get the old-fashioned grinder, and I grind all the wheat berries right through it until it becomes like a mush. And then you add in your ingredients. You add herbs, any kind of herbs you want. I sometimes use cumin. I can use coriander. I could use some of the fragrant herbs like sage or oregano or one of those things. And then I add a little bit of chopped up chives and some garlic. And you can even use the red onions. I like the red onions better than the white ones, by the way. And you can put all this together, and I don't think you even need any salt or anything like that, unless you use some natural. I don't think you'd use any salt. So then you make it into either little patties, or you can put it on a flat tray. And what we used to do is you've made ourselves a little hot box. We had a little electric box with electric bulbs in it, a very low voltage, like 25, 30 watt bulb. And then you just leave it in there, and it actually begins to, it melds all together, and it takes many hours to make, 6 to 8 hours, maybe even longer.
10 hours.
Yes, absolutely. And at the end of the time, the fragrance in wherever you've got this is just outrageous. And then you take it out, and as Gary says, it lasts in the refrigerator a long time. The other way, when you grind up your wheat berries, you want to make a raisin, cinnamon raisin, wheat berry, then you can also put other seeds and other things in it. You could put lentils in it, you could put anything in it, which would all mix in together. But for the sweet one, of course, you need the raisins, and you could even put some little nuts in.
Diced apricots?
Absolutely anything. And that you put the cinnamon or allspice or any of those wonderful spices, and you do exactly the same thing. You grind everything through and make the little patties, and sometimes I throw in the large raisins where you'll have a whole
raisin.
The Manukas, yes. And then you do that same thing. Remember, the baking takes a long time, so if you don't want your oven taken up, even just the pilot light in the oven will do. But I prefer my little hot box or the sun. Of course, you've got to be careful outside because squirrels love this stuff too. You know, you've got to be very careful with your animals. So you have to cover it outside.
Just before we go on, Heather, I just remembered many of the television stations watching, or from which you're watching the show right now, may not have our address. So just send me a stamped self-addressed envelope. That's Gary Knoll, WBAI, that's non-commercial radio in New York, WBAI, 505 8th Avenue, New York, New York, 10018. That's WBAI, Gary Knoll, 505 8th Avenue, New York, New York, 10018, and I'll send you free a recipe for Essene bread. Now, Heather, one of the things I do is I'll take sprouts, let's say wheat sprouts. I'll take the wheat berries after 3 days, and I'll put them through a blender. I'll add diced apricots, some walnuts, some almonds, some nutmeg, cardamom seed,
Terrific, yeah.
fennel. There's no oil that's necessary. There's no flour that's necessary. There's no yeast that's necessary. That's great. There's no dairy that's necessary. It's so simple. And then I'll add some dates and figs. And I blend it for just enough to make it into something of a pomace. I take that out and I'll make that into a mold. The mold is about like this with my hands. I just pat it around till it looks like a little football. And then I'll make others flat. I'll squash them down and circle them till they're flat, and some I'll make oblongs so they look like a cracker. And I'll put those on a cookie sheet, put it in the oven, but I don't turn the oven on. I simply put 125 or 100 watt bulb in the oven and leave that on. The heat from that bulb is enough after 10 hours to cook it, and it rises up, crusts over, and then I have all these cookies, crackers, and breads. I freeze 10 or 15, because I'll make 10 or 15 at one time. And then I'll make savory breads. I'll use fresh garlic, I'll use dill, sweet basil, thyme, tarragon, scallions, chives, and mustard seeds.
Oh yeah, the mustard seeds. You know, you can grow mustard seeds like this, you know, Gary.
Oh, they're very tangy.
They are absolutely delightful. My mother used to, when I was 12 years old, my mother used to grow mustard and cress. And that was in South Africa. I always remember the little tiny trays of mustard and cress on the windowsill. I was raised with sprouts, you know.
Yeah?
Yes.
Isn't it interesting that for years and years, anyone who did anything like this was considered a health nut? And yet now we're seeing that these are blood purifiers, they're energizers. If everyone in hospitals were fed the juice, by the way, to juice a sprout is to give you more potent, high-level energy, concentrated to purify the blood, rebalance the chemistry, and help stimulate from all forms of disease. Sprouts are virtually nature's most perfect single food, and yet for decades people have been denigrated for using something this.
Can you imagine how decorative these would be around a patient who is not feeling very well? Can you imagine the energy coming up but just seeing them? I mean, I think I'd love to go into every hospital bed and give them a bowl of sprouts.
Yes.
It would be fantastic.
And also to make a bouillon out of these.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Heather, what are some of the other things that people can do as far as using these to stimulate well-being?
Well, you know, it's not only just the eating of them, it's really the combination of having them around you all the time and having them as part of your diet, to me, is just the joy. And the joy is, you know, a lot of things are a pain in the neck to make, and food, you know, the person in the kitchen is always saying, oh, it takes me so long to prepare this. Every moment of preparing this kind of food is a joy, and it's exciting, and you're watching something growing and living. And this is what I love about sprouts, because every step of the way they're a joy. They never bite back at you. They don't have a bad smell. They're wonderful, and they look so beautiful. I mean, can you imagine anything more beautiful than having this around you? And we need more green in our lives. That's all I can tell you.
We do. We need beta-carotene. Sprouts are one of nature's highest sources of beta-carotene.
Oh, yes.
And beta-carotene is vitamin A. The beta-carotene helps protect us from cancer, that we know. Sprouts are a rich source of selenium, that we also know. And they are also, the mustard sprouts and the radish sprouts are in what we call our cruciferous vegetables.
Yes, exactly.
And the cruciferous vegetables are anti-cancer.
Absolutely anti-cancer and anti-infection. I mean, you realize all this stuff fights infection in your body where you may not ever need an antibiotic because this is doing all your free radical dispersal.
Yes.
Easy as possible.
By the way, one last thing on the sprouts, the wheat berry sprouts especially. If you blend carob powder in with this, this will help make it taste like a Hershey bar, but without all the junk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Heather Muir.
Thanks.
Heather Muir is my guest. I'm Gary Null. We're on location. Hope you all join us again next week. Until then, stay healthy and stay well.